pleasure. It still amazes me to talk about these subjects. In order to start, our guests have been presented, but I would like to know a bit more. But why are you here and not anyone else? Margarida, good morning. Let me start with you. What is your added value? What are you thinking of leaving with us today? Good morning, Guimarães. Paying tribute to Ana Lúcia Amaral and my father, who used to say good morning to the world. First, thank you. Let me thank the entire Sikh family for the intellectual organization of this meeting, to thank the simultaneous interpreters that allow this to be intercultural. I noticed that, well, you go to bed late and you wake up early. Thank you for that. What I can say is that I see research, and I still do it in the area of human rights, teaching human rights, criteria on the concept of human rights. I did it for many years. I spoke with actors, especially with judges, with prosecutors, and I learned a lot. I learned that the semantics of human rights is a paradox. It is a paradox that is abstract, is general, that might create weird effects, even the one of equality. If we bring this, for example, to criminal law, it might be a weapon against women that will worsen the situation of women who are incarcerated. Can be used for good things with everything that we will bring. Of all these experiences, I did a turning point where I realized that the subject of leadership is very important as a subject for social movements, for those who want to bring change, social innovation, using human rights. It's just like a team in my university, and brings an education for leadership that's inclusive. A leadership within the paradigm of management schools, but something that is pivotal in humanities, of people who really want to change the way that we experience equality. Thank you. I think you've got to realize that from now on, we will take a lot of things home. In the meeting that we had, we understood that the most important thing is to share best practices, not just ideas. I think that we're not here to evangelize anyone. We are all in line. But best practices, especially of our speakers who come from other countries, it's important to have this other side, to exit the boards that are almost non-existent. Gael, good morning. Thank you for being with us. We had a summary of your resume, so what do you have to share with us? Good morning. Thank you so much. Thank you to the organization and also to the interpreters. When we don't speak Portuguese, it's nice to have translation. I work in an association that is headquartered in Paris, in France, and we had a minister that was fighting for the rights to vote, and she was a pioneer. That's why our association has its name. It was named after her. What I do is to work on the ground, because maybe a little less close to the academia, but we work as actors and actresses upon people who want to do something about equality and gender violence. I work with professionals who have a connection with children and youngsters, and professionals of education in different axes. we coordinate everything, and we had the opportunity to discuss things that have to do with education and equality. Research teams, what I really like is training professionals. It is something that is very specific to train professionals on their practices, on the way to approach the issues, and then we gather and provide resources. Some of them are specific, others are created with other structures to work with youngsters, trying to disseminate and put a network in our territory, which is the region of Paris, to have different people who want to work with it. That's what I have to share. Flora, good morning. It's a pleasure to have you. Same question. We know about your resume, sure, but we want to know a bit more about you in this area. Let me start by thanking you all and for having me at this round table. I work in the Center for Education, Media Education, which is at the Ministry of Education. It is a service. And we have a center for training, and our main mission is the coordination of those who are on media education and training. So we have 30,000 teachers that are trained per year. So we have the production of pedagogical resources for trainers, but also for the family. We want to create means in these institutions, and this translates into proposals such as a tender that coordinates for 2 years now for girls and boys that I had the opportunity to discuss. And the last mission is to organize a week with the media at schools, which is a national meeting gathering more than 20,000 establishments in each edition. And the access of equality, this is translated also in the production of resources and encompassing devices than the tender itself. The opportunity that I have, I get all parts of the students, and this gives us a very extended vision in terms of what happens on the issues. And that's what allows us to know what's actually being discussed. I remember an example that the current president of SIG said in Sociedade Civil, the TV program. They put pink, white, and blue sheets telling children choose to start drawing. The inclination is that boys would wear blue and girls would wear pink. This is something that, well, I'm just sharing some of the things that I would like to address. And I never stopped thinking about it. It is something that I occasionally do with post-its at the company. It's very, very interesting. It's a very simple way to assess if we have this kind of stereotypes, if you have pink, for example, in a meeting, if they use them or not. It's so nice. On the other side, Maria, can you hear me? I don't think so. Maria, good morning. As I see the streaming, you're waiting for me to talk, but the sound that I'm hearing is delayed in terms of what's happening. So I have no idea what Fernanda said. I think there is no other way for you to talk to me. I cannot hear what you're telling me. I realize for what's happening that you want to present your experiences. I'm Maria do Mar Pereira. I'm a researcher, sociologist in gender studies on feminist women. I'm coming from the UK. I work at the Warwick University, and I have done some research in terms of being in the UK in the field of equality. And in the beginning, my project here was an ethnographic year. I became a student, and the months that I spent there playing in the field, and well, throughout all those months, I went to observe what would happen in the way that youngsters would negotiate gender and sexuality. Later, I did a project in universities in Portugal, but I was interested in understanding what's being discussed, not just in official areas, but also private, about gender stereotypes, specifically the way that research in this area works. How is it funded? How it is represented? What I was able to see and the experiences that I had also in terms of advocacy and activism, well, what it makes sense to bring me here today is the contrast between official and non-official. What happens and what then happens, well, in the back office. Some areas seem more egalitarian, but what's happening is that it is, well, disappearing in this public work, and this is a connection between what's visible and what happens in, well, conversations are very important in the parts that we participate. Maria is here to tell us about the dark side. Welcome to the dark side. So Maria is here to bring some light, which is something that our law already promotes, but then you have the shadow. And this field of the shadow, maybe it happens in the back office, it happens in the corridors, in the non-formal. And I was very happy to know is that this is fundamental because of the examples. Something that makes me very proud is that the birthday of my niece was about astronauts. Aunts, 60, 70 were looking at the rocket in the middle of the party. Everyone played with the rocket. She wanted the rockets, you know? And it was very, very interesting to observe. That's so cool. But then people were not getting it, you know? Let's start with a house, because education, it's not just what happens at school. Let's start with a house. What's missing? What's missing? Is it just the mothers? Some say that mothers need to educate children for equality. How do you see this? I think that what's missing at home is what's missing out of the home. We have very good ideas, sure. We have wonderful laws. Yesterday, Maria do Céu da Cunha Rego said that we have magical laws. The right to equality is from 1822. So it is actually contemplated in our law. And we also have education, gender studies. We have wonderful thinkers. We have knowledge. We have a rocket, and some people ask, where's the apron? So we find it strange. There's something missing. I think it's interesting to focus on this. I think that laws are pivotal. Public policies are pivotal also. Theoretical or abstract knowledge. Maria do Céu said that the law is abstract, but our knowledge, our modern education is also general and abstract. So what's missing? An education for the being, for the human being. Our modern education is based on knowledge.
Je ne vais pas résoudre le problème de l'inégalité. L'inégalité est une expérience vécue, ce n'est pas une idée, ce n'est pas un concept. Et donc, imaginons, est-ce que je peux faire un petit exercice avec tout le monde, un exercice d'imagination? Et si nous disions, le problème de l'égalité des sexes va être
And we
résolu
all know how to ride a bike. That will solve the problem of gender equality. What do? We adopt a new law and have a city full of bike lanes. Strategy number one, how to build bikes. Let's read all books in the world about bikes, accumulate that knowledge, as Maria del Mar was saying, convey knowledge, convey knowledge. We did it perfectly, magically, if you will, and it won't work. Why? Because the solution is to learn how to ride a bike, okay? That experience for those who know how to ride a bike, the first time where we find balance on top of the bike, there's no book getting us ready for it. It's an experience that we must, well, experience. It's very important to have this idea, education. I'm an educator, I'm a lawyer, but we need to transform it in order to make it adaptable and adapted to ways of being, ways of working that will solve the problem. So I think we need a new activism, an activism of the gain, of listening, of what we have, because it's an ocean of ideas. We cannot disagree with the experience of a person, the subjective experience of a person. That's what new Portuguese letters are revolutionary. The right to be, what we feel, what we want. Don't tell me that they are right, that they are wrong. It is our voice, our bubble, what we feel. I loved the bike metaphor. I don't know how to ride a bike. I think that was a great example, Maria del Mar. Can you comment on it? I don't know how to ride a bike. That's the truth. I never felt that need. And in fact, now,
E estou a tentar que vocês continuem a imaginar que isto é a metáfora para as políticas de igualdade, não é? Eu começo-me a perguntar, nesta idade,
I start to try to understand if it is still worth it.
Porque, curiosamente, eu também não
Oddly enough, I didn't know how to swim. It was a phobia. And I learned how to swim 3 years ago, and I told my story publicly. A lot of people called me saying that, well, you are very courageous. And I said that only when you go beyond fear, your click is when you can talk about it. So I will learn how to ride a bike, and I will send you an email. Yes, it's a balance that you will never lose. Knowing the concept, epistemology. It's like when you say, let's all clean the table, because we understood that, well, if I tidy up, I will be valued. Well, I can say that we are all cleaning the table. So to incorporate equality, Yes, to feel, to experience. In this example of the bike, I will bring it everywhere because it's so obvious. When we understand from the point of view of experience, it needs to be done thus. So we need to be on top of the bike in order to realize what's happening. That is where I understood that it is worth it to change. Let's bike to London now. I would love you to comment this idea and to bring some added value in terms of this subject on how things work in terms of giving tools to others, of not sharing our bubble, but to have our own part. I found it very interesting, and I want to run with it, or maybe to bike with it. But I think that it's important to go through this. The first one has to do with the reaction of Fernanda to the metaphor of the bike, because Fernanda said, I don't know how to ride a bike. And this feeling, I'm not the ideal person of this world where everyone is a biker. No, this world is not for me, it's not me. I'm not the protagonist of this world. And is it worth it? Maybe I will give up. Maybe I will separate myself from it. And I think that that reaction, it's a micro example of what happens. Many times I see t-shirts that say that the future is female. This view that people who will be the agents of present and future will be women, people who ride bikes. And that has a specific example on those that are connected to the past, those who cannot belong to this subjectivity. And this has consequences also. This feeling of sadness. Many times, I'm talking about people who are not expressed to have this kind of emotions, like sadness, fear. It takes the shape of anger, of fighting attitude. Oh yeah, now you only like people who ride bikes? Well, let's see, let's go against it. Let's go against bikes. And no one was against bikes, but all of a sudden it becomes so many things that it creates kind of wars and conflicts. And I think it's important to think about this. One other thing that I find funny, the Fernanda was saying, how is it that today we are still trying to solve this? And I think that this is very interesting, this idea that we have that as time goes by, things would become easier. This is 2022, we should already have a certain point because time has gone by, and as Margarida said, knowledge is already there. The problem is that these are non-linear things because of these emotional issues. Because the time when there is this move where everyone knows how to ride a bike, there is a greater reaction to the bike, and if there is a greater reaction to the bike, there are setbacks, there are conflicts, there is a strengthening of stereotypes that were not being mobilized. And one of the things that I see in Portugal and other countries is a conceptual and political difficulty in thinking about a movement for equality against discrimination, something that it's non-linear. It comes and goes. And whenever we have an advance when we can teach certain people to ride a bike, a new challenge comes about for which we were not prepared, that will demand new work. It's not just the same ideas for years and years. It is something where bikes are very useful to go around obstacles, new ways, and that is why it makes sense to think about this, connecting to emotion, thinking about a way that can say it's important for everyone to ride a bike. There is people to whom there is brings some insecurity. In terms of equality, it's not just women or men. It's women who are used to do things in a certain way because this brings them pleasure. We were talking about, Gael was talking about the positive reinforcement that is given to girls when they help us with this kind of tasks. This is so important to waive positive reinforcements where we have these stereotypes. It's so hard for women as it is for men and other groups where we can think so. Equality seems to be so obvious, so necessary that it is emotional. It's going back and forward, and it makes it much more interesting, but much harder also.
Problema das metáforas, não é? Só para dizer, Maria Tomar, a metáfora da bicicleta não é para dizer que temos todos que andar de bicicleta.
Just to tell you that we don't all need to ride bikes, okay? We need to take into account the experience of people, different of laws and knowledge. Following the metaphor, what is this? To listen to the voice of Fernanda. I fully agree with you when you say that we cannot go into a war of humanism, feminism. That's a very severe mistake. We need to think that this is a spectrum. We are all in it, right? So I need to have areas such as this one where I can feel safe to talk about my own ignorance and also uncomfortable. Having colleagues saying that your feminism does not represent me. That's very interesting in the feminist paradigm. Whenever I teach my students, I say that this is a living paradigm. It's a paradigm that self-corrects. There are a lot of diversities, a lot of disagreements, so it will self-correct. We will learn from each other. And we see ourselves in the mirror saying, wow, this was something that I was ignoring. So the metaphor, this blind spot, is something that we use carefully, the experience of someone who doesn't know how to ride a bike. Well, talking about sports, it's peculiar because at home, my husband is a triathlon athlete, Ironman. It's terrible, I know, but he does it and it thinks that that's great. Swimming and then a marathon. Crazy, right? But oddly enough, I was thinking, I tried to translate some of the ideas that I had. More than just a bike, this is a triathlon with small modalities where we are empowered for one and for other, but triathlon can be done with different people, one, the other, and it can be a relay race. There is a fourth modality, and the team, I never had that experience until this week. He went to see Ironman in Cascais from the point of view of the fourth modality, the support team. And that's what he said. Now I understand what Fernanda said, that she did 5 Ironman. Those who are following it is a modality also. This is fundamental. Thank you for bringing this metaphor. It's so important, so interesting. The environment that's safe in order to feel uncomfortable seems to be a paradox, but it is the hardest to bring. You are safe and you might be in discomfort, but nowadays, young adults at home, my kids, it's the less easy part to feel that they are talking and that they are not comfortable because they are at that age where they are the ones who are right. We have one that's 27 that is marathon, but we have the youngest ones who don't know how to ride a bike. How do we make smaller ones and older ones to feel uncomfortable, but in a safe manner? How does this happen?
Oui, je trouve que ça fait écho vraiment ce que vous disiez sur la subjectivité, sur les émotions. Je pense que c'est un axe.
I was paying attention to what you were saying about subjectivity. I think it's a huge risk connecting to gender, connecting to equality. These are things that we must learn and convey. We need to know how to identify emotions, how to say that they all need to be able to express their emotions and needs, because that conditions a lot of things.
De pouvoir le dire, que ça soit accepté, qu'on ressente ce type d'émotion, et de pouvoir ensuite aller chercher, identifier ce dont on a besoin pour y répondre, pour se sentir mieux. Pour moi, ça,
feeling threatened, for example, expressing emotions, that's the problem. It's something that's pivotal that we can express and we can convey to school, essentially for those who start very young, how to express emotion, knowing that not everyone has the same type of emotion, they don't feel the same thing. It's easier to understand the experience of those who are closer to me, but not necessarily our experience might not seem natural for some and the others. It's not universal. We need to have the capacity to learn more, to put together issues that everything depends of what we have in terms of experience. We cannot understand everything. We need to normalize something like, okay, you're right. I didn't know about that. We need to have an area where we have the trust of being able to say, how do we feel, without putting that into question by the person with whom we stand. No need to know how to express things that are not in agreement with our relations. Sometimes I disagree with things I said a week ago, 2 hours ago, 6 months ago. So we must not have an impact on the depthness of our relationship and knowledge. We need a lot of humbleness also. We will never have an ideal world, I think. We win some, you lose some. But we find a balance between what we are now, what we are experiencing, and the challenge that will come next. Very difficult question.
Non, je pense que effectivement l'égalité c'est un apprentissage continuel.
I think that equality is a continuous learning. We need how to ask things and listen to others. It is absolutely pivotal.
Le prochain défi, je pense que c'est de réussir à ce que tout le monde se sente concerné par l'égalité.
The idea is to make it that everything or everyone is worried about equality,
podemos falar de igualdade, mas sim igualdades.
We cannot talk about equality. We must talk about equalities. Okay?
Oui, bien sûr, au pluriel.
Sem dúvida.
Des égalités, effectivement. Et parce que,
Yes, plural,
effectivement,
equalities.
si aucune expérience n'est pareille, qu'il faut prendre en compte chaque expérience. Et,
Experiences
respect aussi.
are the same, and we need to pay respect.
Respeitar quem ainda não sabe andar de bicicleta. Nós estamos perto das 11 e eu sou de cumprir horários, portanto vamos avançar.
We are coming close to 11. Let's go to the final round of questions. Maria do Mar, I think you can hear us, so it was just to have this issue of having this online problem solved. So not as a conclusion, because I think we will never be finished, but our main subject of our roundtable, equality in education and culture, and in French is 3 words, égalité, equality, education and culture.
Nós aqui, enquanto estávamos a preparar o debate, dizíamos...
While we were preparing the debate, we said equality and culture said that it's not 3 things, it's 4. But what are these things, actually? What are we talking about today? What will we bring home? Each person brings a different thing from this panel. What seems important? I have an interesting example that has to do something with culture. I was invited to talk in one of the channels in Portugal about a phenomena that was happening at that time. And I was in the makeup room, and we can define a way that they apply the makeup to everyone who will talk on TV and the things that are imposed to those who appear. I went out of that with a different hairdo, and I went to try and mess up my hair, you know, because a certain way of femininity for too much for my taste. But the presenter came in. It's of no use to say his name, but he said, "Thank you for coming. Very nice to have you with us. But I know what you're about to say." And I said, "What? You're a sociologist. You say that everything depends on this, on that, that everything is very difficult." And I said, "Yes, you're absolutely right." And I think that's the goal, you know? It goes on social sciences, art, culture. It's to encourage this kind of thinking of complexity. And during the interview, during the debate, other people were there participating. And they wanted to push me also to say that this was good, this was bad. And I resisted. I think that everything is very difficult, it depends. And if there's something that I might convey is that how can the importance in political and intellectual terms and social, the media, our culture, continuing to developing the ability to understand these phenomena as phenomena that are tricky, where you might need different strategies in different contexts, because it depends. And that a very simplistic, polarized thinking, binary, black and white, it's of no use. It's of no use for us. So in the media, we just presented the idea that our audience doesn't want difficult things. They want a clear answer, yes or no. And children, youngsters, they can do it much more than we can. So I love this idea, Fernanda, of challenging, but people were feeling safe and they had the ability to be challenged too. In order to pull the rug, to face people, to challenge people, they need to be holding on to something. So having more nuanced debate, grayer, not black and white, I think it's very useful. So I would like to bring the complexity to our debate on these issues, resisting a trend that making everything binary, simple, good and bad that I see in Portugal and in other countries, especially because of social media.
Espero que esteja a ouvir o aplauso.
I hope that you can hear people applauding
E
you.
acredito que muita gente também em casa estará a aplaudir. É curioso perceber, não é? Eu passei uma boa
It's
parte da minha vida na
very
televisão,
interesting to understand that I spent most of my life on TV. I do understand everything you're saying about everything that can be done just in a makeup room, and how peculiar it is to say, and I was told this one time, don't ask questions, don't ask questions. Just let them answer yes or no. I always love the idea of the parrot saying things that they heard before. To give time for people to think, to be slightly uncomfortable, I think that is our main job as moderators, but as moderators of the world, when we are bringing this in terms of leaving time and space for all of this. I would say, Flora, in the world of make-believe, we need to live in an eternal age of why. Why? Does this make sense?
Alors, je suis pas sûre d'avoir compris la dernière question.
I don't know if I understood the question. In Portugal, we use the expression the age of why. We ask a lot of things. Why this? Why that? And that's the issue. Is it worth it to be asking why when we talk about equality?
Oui, déjà, je pense qu'il faut arrêter de sous-estimer l'intelligence des élèves et des publics quand il s'agit.
I think we need to stop and underestimate this part of the media. We need to try and show that we have the capacity to understand what we're told.
Et oui, je pense qu'il faut continuellement se questionner et voilà, rester en fait dans le questionnement.
We need to ask and to keep ourselves in a continuous questioning to better understand things. Is there something that you can share with us so that we can continue to know how to ask questions? I don't know how to ride a bike, so now I'm making a question.
Non, je sais pas, mais je trouve que
well, I don't know.
De s'exprimer, c'est une bonne réponse déjà.
To allow students to talk about things is a proper answer.
Faire de la pratique médiatique, c'est parce que d'abord ils s'informent pour ensuite informer les autres. Et donc du coup, forcément, on est dans la réflexion.
They can inform others, and by doing this,
je pense que c'est une première solution.
It's not a solution for everything. It could be a first solution, yes, and all examples of production that are truly representative of what we can put in practice. And we must not forget about the subjects that are one last approach. We live in a world where we are all online, we are all on social media. Do you believe that social media is a challenge for the future that has been addressed yesterday are friendly to the equality speech? It's not easy. It's not an easy question. Many times we face the same problem in the public area. It's an area of words where we have problems with everything that's online.
pense que c'est
And
partout, en fait,
we
il faut
don't
un
need to make the devil out of everything that happens online. We need to follow through. We need to have some education about this.
Être confronté, enfin, tout seul face à cet univers qui est voilà, vaste
We cannot leave youngsters to face it alone.
et complexe. Mais après, on
It's
voit aussi
quite a
que,
vast
voilà, les réseaux sociaux, c'est aussi
example. It's tricky, you
un
know,
droit de libération de la
but
parole, on peut s'exprimer, donc
there is
c'est
also an
voilà,
issue of an
c'est pas tout blanc
opportunity
ou tout noir.
to
Il faut
express,
essayer c'est un outil
it's
pour
not all
essayer de
black and
s'exprimer le mieux
white.
possible.
There are differences,
Lá está, não é uma pergunta para resposta sim
and
ou não.
everything
Podemos
is
pôr a
possible.
pensar. Gael, agora sim, vai-me explicar
Gael,
estas três palavras, afinal,
could you
são
please
mais do que três
explain why
palavras.
these three words are more than just three words?
Oui, non, en fait, moi, ce que j'ai pensé tout de suite, on a parlé de ces trois thèmes et ça c'est voyé avec tout ce qu'on a dit. Le quatrième, c'est la question des ressources et de la volonté politique. Je l'ai dit ici,
Yes, the political will
de coopération,
of what we have
politique sur
and
de culture, d'égalité et d'éducation.
of equality of education
De se donner du temps pour faire jaillir la
and
complexité, pour échanger, pour
this
apprendre.
complexity to learn
Qui sont pas innés, donc de donner aussi
of what we are
les
giving
ressources et les
this
moyens nécessaires. Là,
on
je
the
reprends mon
need,
association pour dire voilà, c'est aussi
on
quelque
the
chose
association for what is
on déteste
happening,
la matérialité.
that we have on
déteste
this
ces choses
materiality. We're not talking about
et
all
ensuite,
these
parce qu'on est revenu
things,
sur des choses très concrètes,
on
comment des
things that are
stéréotypes, on
quite
en vient à des
specific,
inégalités
on the
très palpables
stereotype with
qui
equality
impactent sur notre quotidien.
that is on the everyday
Tout
life
ce qu'on échange et de toute la connaissance qu'on a et les expériences qu'on a qui sont
of all these
diverses,
parts that we know
on se renforce.
that are
Comment
diverse, that are
de
strengthened,
façon
we
très concrète,
strengthen
on va
the
pouvoir
way
aller
that
faire des choses,
we
donner le temps à
will,
tout le
on a
monde de s'en
specific
saisir,
manner,
d'apprendre
doing
des choses,
things, giving
donc
time to
l'importance
all to learn and to
de la
exchange
politique publique et
experiences
de
with
la
the
volonté politique et des
importance of
moyens
having public
qui vont avec. Ouais, donc ça
policies
pour moi c'est ça
and
vraiment
the
le point
will.
commun à tous ces thèmes et ce que j'aimerais
This is
voilà,
truly the common ground
plaidoyer
to
quand même.
all of this. That's why
Uhum.
I would like
E
to
antes de fechar, eu não sei se está previsto
talk about
só
this
essa
in this
perguntas do
forum.
público.
I would love to know if there are any questions from the audience. We have a question
Está
here,
acessível o
yes.
microfone aqui. Obrigada, Bruno, pela ajuda. Bom dia.
Good morning.
Donc, je suis Carole Modigliani.
Good morning.
Je
Carole
travaille pour le
Montiani.
ministère français de l'égalité entre les
I
femmes
work
et les
for
hommes.
the French
Je tiens tout d'abord
Ministry
à
of
remercier
Equality
toutes les
between men and women.
intervenantes et puis vous-même,
And I would like to
modératrice,
thank
pour ces
all the
échanges très
speakers
intéressants.
and to you as the
Et en
moderator
fait,
for
moi,
these
j'avais
brilliant
une question
ideas.
pour
Quite
l'ensemble,
interesting.
c'est-à-dire que on a
And
beaucoup parlé
in terms of the
du
set of the
positionnement, du
panel,
regard
we talk a
critique,
lot about
de la
the
mise en danger,
positioning
voilà,
of the
de
critical
cette remise en
view
question,
in terms of
voilà,
the
du point de vue,
dangers of putting
en
in
fait,
question
potentiellement de tout le monde, mais aussi des élèves,
potentially of
des
everyone, but
enseignants,
also
etc.
students,
Après, avec le ministère de la Culture, nous, on
teachers.
travaille aussi beaucoup sur
As
comment
the
on
Ministry of
incite
Culture,
aussi tous ceux qui
we
produisent
do
des
have
contenus, que ce soit des
a
contenus
connection to all
éducatifs,
those who are
culturels,
bringing
etc.,
forward
à
content,
se remettre en
educational,
question,
cultural,
à remettre en
etc.,
question les représentations
in terms of
qu'ils
questions,
offrent voilà, à
representations.
voir. Et c'est vrai que souvent les médias
And it is
voilà,
true
jouent aussi sur les stéréotypes parce que ça fonctionne bien, parce qu'il y a l'audience. Donc voilà,
that they
c'est
have
comment faire en
a role
sorte
in
que
stereotypes that works
ces
properly with audiences,
représentations-là,
and how
en
will we
fait, ces
do it so that
mentalités,
this
elles atteignent aussi
representation on
ces
this
producteurs qui ont beaucoup de pouvoir
mentality
et, comme ça a été dit aussi, une
of those who
responsabilité
have a lot of
vis-à-vis de la
power
société.
and they
Donc
have
voilà,
a
nous, après, au niveau des
responsibility
ministères, on a
before
par exemple
society.
mis en
So
place une
we,
charte
in terms
d'engagement
of
pour les
the
industries culturelles
ministry, we put in
créatives,
practice a
pour
chart, a
développer,
letter
promouvoir
for the
l'égalité dans,
creative
alors à
industries
la
to
fois
develop and
dans les
promote
équipes, mais aussi
equality,
dans les contenus. Et cette question des contenus,
not
voilà,
just in
elle
teams,
est
but
pour moi
also in
assez
content.
importante. Donc voilà, je pose la question pour
And this
tout le
is
monde.
very
Merci beaucoup.
important.
Maria, quer começar?
And this is for you all. Thank you.
Agora também rapidamente vou partilhar uma experiência. Então, lá está,
Very
sei lá,
quickly, let me
na
share an
ordem, não é? Lá
experience.
tem a carta. Eu acho que agora o que nós precisamos é destilar isso em
The
experiências
charter is there,
concretas.
so we need to bring
O ano
this
passado
to
fui convidada para ir a uma
specific parts.
comunidade
I was invited to go to the indigenous community of Canada called Cree to participate in the Circle of Word, if you will, which is a Cree ceremony where survivors were there in terms of the sexual violence and others that happened. Canada is facing its colonial history. And I heard a lot of comments and teaching, and to be with them for 2 days at a tent where they are all on the same hierarchy. They had a stick, and the person who was talk would hold the stick, and everyone had to listen. And then you go around, and then they go around. It was so transformative that I thought, wow, the charts in industries trying to get those blind spots part of what these stereotypes, so the victims and what that gets from their lives in terms of vitality, quality at work, in life. I think that those experiences are very transformative for those who hear them and say, yes, this is my experience. It's just an example. We are talking about these parts in terms, for example, of a set of different voices that are coming to the center. The world has always been very different. So those voices are coming. And we need to see this as great news to expand our identity, to expand our way of being and thinking. It's not bad news, it's great news. It's like going around the corner. So I think it's to foster this kind of media and where those who discriminate can hear from those who are discriminated the experience of discrimination itself in any industry. Yes, Gael, do you want to quickly answer? Sure, I can. Well, I'm not an expert. There is conditionalities that can also, I don't know the details of this. It's not seen. It's access to access that public dimension because that is something that is very specific. So, this is something that happens, but what Marimar would say is that it's not an issue of numbers, it's an issue of geography. Everything improves of women and men, and that happened in the new programs that this part we lost that role of men and women. There is an impact. And companies who are bringing it back to it. So there is a strict program that we cannot leave aside of the choices of those manuals. It is necessary to put its values in manuals and also in programs of literature, of French, something that happens for all teachers must do it. Within a different subject, there are 4 subjects that must be addressed, and each one of them, there are 3 things that must be chosen, and it happened on the central view of the ministry since 2019. You have the problem to 2024, and there is just 1/3 of them written by authors in an official program. And in the rare texts that we have there, these are texts that are less known by teachers because they're not being taught and followed by resources to allow that they take on those works that are not available, for example, in cheaper formats, so that students can buy. These are very expensive works, and these are specific problems, political problems. So we have just half of what we need that are in women, and to reach this goal, if you're talking about less and known texts or less accessible, we need to have the means to follow through the training of teachers that will take on these teaching resources to help them and to quote those who are putting this title in the market, creating an edition that's less expensive. And we can do the same thing that we are doing, but it's just like we had the range.
Oui, bah déjà, je rejoins complètement cette réponse. Et je dirais que oui, la question du contenu, elle est primordiale. Mais je pense que ce qu'il faut souligner aussi, c'est qu'il y a déjà des
I
enseignants
think that's a problem worldwide. We need to highlight that there are
qui
teachers who
proposer
make an effort to try and find new content, bringing things to students. And I think that it is important that if this is not appropriate, we need to propose to have a critical view and then making it that they are the ones bringing the content, do what they have.
Mais quand même, je pense qu'il y a quand même des enseignants qui sont très engagés sur ces questions et qui vont
I think that there are teachers who are deeply involved in these issues
adapter et
that will have resources that are adapted. And that's it.
Maria do Mar, quer acrescentar também a sua resposta a esta questão antes de terminarmos a nossa
Do you want to answer before we finish this
Um
question?
comentário muito breve, porque sei que há coisas interessantes que vêm já a seguir. Eu acho que
Very interesting things coming. So I think in terms of this charter, this letter, it's very interesting.
De uma coisa que eu acho que é importante pensar.
We need to think that we see this development, legislation, new actions.
E eu acho que a reação a ter
And I think the reaction to this development is to be optimistic, to celebrate.
Abre muitas portas.
It opens a lot of doors. It brings us hope. But we need to bring some reality in terms of implementing of what the letter is about to bring. So I believe this combination of optimism with realism, okay? It's not to be paranoid, but to be cynical and never believing in anything. And I think that this letter will solve everything. We did 40,000 letters and everything is the same. So I think that reality is somewhere in the middle. Things are not all the same, but there are still challenges. So it's been very important to me that areas such as this one where we can find reasons to celebrate, but to get the space and time to think that we need to celebrate, and now what is the next thing? It's hard, so tired. So I hope that they are bringing energy. It is being quite energizing to be here with you from a distance. It's a mixture, you know, energizing.
Wrap-up, muito rápido. Acho
So,
que, seguindo o que estava também a dizer a Maria Mário, o que disse a Fernanda,
it's like Fernanda said,
que olha para trás, para o passado, porque é que estamos
looking back, why we stand where we stand, we need to bring this idea of the how, which is the future, creating the future of equality.
pensarmos os direitos humanos, nós não tropeçamos em direitos humanos na rua, não existe nas árvores, não existe.
Human
Temos um
rights
direito
don't
de
grow on
liberdade.
trees. It's a creation
E
of
não é?
language
E é por isso
that
que eu
has
concordo muito com a
invented
igualdade.
a world.
Acho que temos que entrar nessa idade
So I
moderna,
think
qual é
that
a
we need to go
linguagem
into the
para
society
a
of the
partir do
how,
futuro vai
of
construir
the
esse futuro.
lingo, that from the
Nós
future will
temos
build it.
nós temos um sonho para a igualdade, qual é
The
esse
way
sonho?
that we have a dream for equality.
É uma dança entre
It is a
imaginar e
dance
agir, que era a
between
dança que
imagining and
tivemos na
acting.
exposição no Palácio de Cristal de homenagem à Ana Luísa Amaral.
There was an exhibition for Ana Luísa Amaral, Imagine and Act, the translation, of course. Within the amazing metaphor of the bike, I think that all these whys, these hows, lead us and take us on wheels for a path to equality. Let me thank you. How proud I am to be here with you, to have learned with you. It was a real deep learning. It was really worth it to be here in Guimarães, listening to everything that happened yesterday and today.
O documentário extraordinário, eu não tinha tido hipótese de ver no Doc Lisboa. Eu recomendo, é bom ponto de partida para começar
It is a great departure point to talk about the whys and the hows. This exhibition that's so intense on about Maria. Well, all those voices, I took a lot of pictures sending to my kids, and some of them, although they know about their history, they didn't know, oh, they would meet. They would meet at a coffee and next to our current house. So when we go there, it's not the same thing. It's riddled with symbolism, saying that, well, they were here. And we talk about that, we show the exhibition, and then we go to the coffee shop. And it's not the same. They start asking questions. It's quite peculiar. These experiences that I hope that you can take with you when you get home, friends, whatever, that we can continue to feel uncomfortable so that when we get the stick, I already participated in things like that. I hope it's not to assault, but to share. Thank you again, especially to Maria do Mar, to Flora Gaeler, and Margarida. Thank you once again to SIG for having us, and congratulations to the team putting together this conference. Thank to our translators. Thank you, social media. I mean, if you need to send me a question, just try and find Fernanda Freitas. And let's go to the stage reading of the new Portuguese letters.
Muito agradecemos as vossas intervenções.
Thank you for your presentation, very interesting. Let's now go, like Fernanda said, to the stage reading of the new Portuguese letters by students Solange Fernandes, Ana Rodrigues, Raquel Campos, Francisca Barros, Francisco Oliveira, Lara Abreu, Mafalda Faria, Mustari Bono, Filipa Salgado, Rita Machado, Clara Diniz, and Rodrigo Pereira, of the group Virginia Moura. Thank you.
Bom dia! Somos alunos do 9º ano da Escola Virgínia Moura. Vamos dramatizar
Good morning.
excertos
We
das
are
novas
ninth
cartas
grade
portuguesas
students
publicadas
and we
pelas
are
autoras
here
Maria
to
Isabel
read
Moreno, Maria Teresa
parts
Horta
of
e
new
Maria Amélia da
Portuguese
Costa.
letters.
Avisamos que o texto foi reduzido e
The
adaptado
text
para
has
que nos
been
fosse mais fácil
adapted
representá-lo.
in order
Vamos
to
dar
be
o nosso
easier to
melhor.
represent it.
Esperamos que gostem.
We will give it our best. Hope you enjoy it.
Olá, bom dia. Acho que a Lara e a Francisca vão chegar atrasadas, mas acho que podemos começar. Mas nós só temos 30 minutos para a nossa dramatização e ainda nos faltam muitos ensaios. Olá, chegamos. Desculpem o atraso. Desculpem lá.
Hi, we're here.
Agora que já estamos todos, vamos nos
Well, we're ready.
para dramatizar
Let's do
as
this.
cartas portuguesas.
We were asked to stage new Portuguese letters. There's a lot of us, each one has our ideas. Let's comply with different opinions. First, two sisters are shocked because they found the letter in the drawer of her mother and the friends are there. They comment, they interrupt, and then we find a different way to do it.
Então quem é que vão ser as irmãs? Somos nós. Já estivemos a treinar ontem. Onde é que elas
We were training yesterday.
vão tipo ir por ali e depois vêm a correr, a apresentar.
You come running.
É que vocês nem imaginam o que encontramos no meio dos papéis.
You don't imagine what we found.
Esta carta escrita
What?
por Maria Adélia.
This letter written by Maria Amélia, a girl educated religiously.
Fiquei chocada com a maneira como tratavam as
We
mulheres
will now read the letter. We were shocked the way that women were treated at that time.
Fiquei tão triste. Leiam lá,
I
estamos
couldn't sleep.
curiosos.
I was so sad. Well, just read it.
Tarefas e cada pessoa tem que cumprir
There are many chores. Each one has its own. Chores for men, chores for women. For men and those who require strength, courage.
Então isso quer dizer serem
Oh,
presidentes,
that means
generais,
that
soldados,
to be general
soldados,
treated by this,
caçadores, toureiros, serem futebolistas,
hunters,
etc.
bullfighters.
Sim, é isso mesmo.
Yes,
Ao homem deu Deus na
that's it.
a tarefa de velar e mandar.
There was a
Jesus Cristo
task
foi homem.
that
E
even
Deus
Jesus
escolheu
Christ
ter
was the
filho e não
man,
filha para morrer nesse
and
mundo,
God
pelos
chose
nossos
to have a
pecados e
son,
muitos.
not
Em
a
hora de
daughter.
amar-se. Pai, perdoa-se que eles não sabem o que fazem.
So, Father, forgive them because they know not what they do. They are the ones who organize wars to take the world out of sin. For example, the crusade, fighting to save the country.
Sim, sim, é isso mesmo. Estou um bocado cansada da garganta. Podes ler
I'm
aqui?
a bit tired.
Depois, há as tarefas das mulheres.
And then there's a
Acima de
chore
tudo,
of
está a ter
women,
cuidar deles, dar-lhes
taking care of
educação,
children,
carinho.
educating
Há também
them.
tarefas das mulheres, como por exemplo ser
There are
professora,
also tasks
engenheira,
of women to be a
advogada,
teacher, a lawyer, an engineer,
que é limpar, arrumar a
cleaning,
casa, cozinhar para o
tidying up,
maridinho,
cooking
para quando eles
for the
chegam
husband. So when he gets home from work, tired, so that he can rest,
que ele faz é para
because the
sustentar
work
os
that he
filhos.
does is
Mas
to
essa carta já deve ter sido escrita bem
take
no
care
século
of
XIX, ou até
children and
muito
us.
antes.
I think that was written in the 19th century or before. No, no, no. It was written not that long ago. It was in 1971. My grandmother was born in 1950, so those cures for men and women already existed.
Ir à minha avó para me falar desse
When I'll get home, I will ask my grandmother to tell me about this. I think she was born in 45.
Já deve ser muito antigo.
This thing of men being the bosses of women must be very old. Let's continue to page read the letter because we need to think about it at the end. Now, Maria Adela is telling about the conversation she had with her mother. So, let's page read it differently. Clara could be the mother, and instead of one daughter, we could have three. Mustari, Leonora, and Francisca could be the daughters. But Leonora left, so Rita. Rita can do it then. Dear daughters, life is very expensive. No one can pay for it, so women need to work to help the husband provide for the family. I don't want to help my husband. I will marry a very rich man who can give me dresses, jewelry, cars, going to the movies and having two maids. Nice. That's nice. Don't marry with a poor man like your father. We cannot pay anything. We came here because he's actually a patsy. So we are here. The only thing we can eat is stones from the sea. What does it mean to have no land? Well, it means that we are far from everything and everyone. That's it. You are absolutely right. At least my father would have some vegetables, potatoes. You were never hungry. But your father decided to come here to be a stonemason. I come here to work as a stonemason. But that's what we have to do. That's what I did, right? But he works to work to a noble person whose child was at a convent. Well, I'm very unsettled. You're absolutely right. The destiny of women was to go to the convent. It still is. It's not mandatory anymore, though. But the priest said that it is a vocation. I don't know what that means. It's a chore, not a vocation, right? I know what I experienced there. I'm only there throughout the day. Even the other day, the noblewoman asked me if I wanted to be a nun. I smiled and looked to the ground as my mother taught me. She said, so cute, and she pat me. I saw the rings that were shining with beautiful stones, thinking that it should be a task for women. So I wanted to be one. I kissed her hand, and all of a sudden, to feel the rings. And she thought that it was because I really liked her and said, poor girl, and gave me some money. But she took the money from me. Well, this was always able to bring food to the table. I only give it because they have their chores, their tasks, and one of which is to obey, but I never say everything about life. So each one will pay for things, and in this life we have the role to be smart. And one of the tasks of women is to just make believe. Mom, can I ask you a question? Do you tell everything to our father? We need to be very devious to do what we want, because we are very weak and they do what they want, but we need to be smart. One other task of women is to be devious, right? But is that not a sin? The priest said that we must not fall into temptation. I don't get it. Can I interrupt? Maybe it's better to put Adelia's mother to talk with the daughter, complaining about life and the chores. Well, I think that will happen in a very proper manner, yes. I can be the mother, yes. My life is past cleaning whatever my husband puts in his array. One of the tasks of the rich is to be merciful, and poor people need to feel obliged. Some have everything, some have nothing. That's the will of God. He was never hungry like we did. The priest said that we need to be poor to go to heaven, and he told me a very interesting story of a camel that would go through a needle. That's a task of children, yes. And it's a task of big people to put children in detention. Why? So that they learn how to know how to punish people, because punishing is something that happens a lot and it's necessary for life. Oh, yeah. Last week, my boss punished me because I was telling my colleagues that they should have more money because what they paid me was not a lot and it was not enough to buy food. One of the tasks of bosses is to punish employees instead of getting richer. Maybe one day I will get married with a boss. Well, my father many times yells, "I'm the boss here," and my mother just cries. Let me tell you about one more chore. A woman of a bad life. Well, every woman has bad lives. My mother has a bad life, so it's one of the chores is to be virtuous also. I don't understand what it means to be virtuous. I think we're much better. Maybe tomorrow we can have a general essay, right? I think it's okay. I think we've done good. I'm a bit confused. I'm a bit sad. Men can still be the bosses of women, and women have no rights. It happens there, okay? And that's why we need to fight for our rights. Yes. Amazing intervention by students of 9A and 9B, guided by Professor Luisa Ferreira. A round of applause, please. We will now like to call on stage the student Bernardo Machado. But let's bring on stage the students because we have a token of appreciation by the seat president. Once again, thank you for coming and hope to see you soon. Let's now bring on stage the student Bernardo Machado, talk about Virginia Moura, patron of the school cluster that were named after her. Virginia Moura was born in 1915 in São Martinho do Cone, in Guimarães, in the educational area of Moreira de Cónegas. She was deceased in Porto, 19th of April, 98. She was a daughter of a primary teacher. She studied in this parish where she lived. When she was 10, she went to Guimarães and then to Povo de Varzim. Then in Porto, when she started an intense political activity. In 33, her connection to the political and partisan activity has participated in the Portuguese section of Red Up with Socorro Vermelho for the political prisoners, Portugal and Spain. So it was confounded on the following. She was a personality of great value. She was born in the region and whose life acted with unconditional defense of the rights of freedom. She was the first Portuguese woman to get the title of civil engineer, having been denied the access to public service because of her political, because she opposed the fascist dictatorship. Her intense political activity brought to surprise for the first time in 1949. Up to the 25th of April, what happened many times, with an intense cultural activity having cooperated under the tutor of Maria Selma in different papers, with the publication of Sol Nascente and many conferences with the participation of people such as Teixeira Pascoais, Maria Isabel Boa Inglês, and Maria Lamas. She worked in the organization of the anti-fascist national movement, on the movement of democratic unity, and the National Democratic Movement, MND. She wrote Carta de uma Mulher Moderna to call women into political life to fight for their rights, summoning the participation of women in their own life, in their own emancipation. After the 25th of April, Virginia Moura continued to build democracy. She has been distinguished with the Order of Freedom and the Medal of Honor of the City of Porto and the Democratic Movement of Women. Strong convictions, always fighting for peace, the rights of women and youngsters, and for better conditions of popular classes. Faithful to the ideals of freedom, solidarity, humanity, always paying attention to social problems, fighting to improvement. She has been a relevant personality before and after the 25th of April. She is one of the one responsible for the consolidation of democracy in Portugal. Thank you. Thank you, Bernardo. We would like to invite you to take a 15-minute break so that we can have some coffee. We will return at 11:45. Thank you.
Bem-vindas e bem-vindos de novo de volta ao Fórum Igualdade, Encontro Feminista, para nos falarem sobre as conclusões e os desafios futuros. Convidamos as comissárias para a temporada Portugal-França 2022 a subir ao palco. Pela parte portuguesa, Manuela Judis.
We also have Manuela Judis and Victoire de Rosa for the French part.
Chamamos ainda ao palco a Presidente da Comissão para a Cidadania e Igualdade de Género, Sandra Ribeiro.
We would also like to call Sandra Ribeiro on stage.
Qual das duas queres começar? Manuela. Se calhar eu aproveitava para fazer um pequeno enquadramento da temporada e deste fórum em particular.
Let me give you some framework of the season and this event. Dear Secretary of State, dear Ambassador, Sandra Natividade, Victoire, Charlotte, Carol, all those, Maris, Natalia, first word of appreciation will be for those who allowed us to be here today with their work, and especially with the excitement and a lot of will for this to become a reality. So thank you all. This has been decided by the Prime Minister, Antonio Costa, and the French President Emmanuel Macron in 2018, and it was designed to happen between the two presidencies, the Portuguese presidency that took place last year and the French presidency that happened in the first semester of this year. It was expected to happen in 2021, and this is a political decision, no doubt there. Choosing the date was Europe. It was because of Europe. It had to be delayed for 2022 because of the pandemic, but the subject, Europe, and two other axes of the ocean, Portugal and France, were at that time the only country who had a mystery of the sea. The subject of the oceans and gender equality have been very important in the season. There was a concern always having from the cultural and scientific part all the areas that we worked on. We were always worried with the presence of the balance between artists of all areas and of all sexual choices, let's call them choices. The Forum of Equality has been or has begun in ENG during the French presidency and under the auspice of the French presidency of the EU in March. So when we were preparing it immediately, the Secretary of State at that time, Rosa Monteiro, said, don't forget of the 50th anniversary of New Portuguese Letters. Talking about this, immediately, Victoire accepted to accept this idea and said, let's try to find those who have supported and let's think about what this solidarity was in the 70s. And now, in Guimarães, the answer to we are all here with the New Portuguese Letters with Ana Luísa Amaral in our minds and to think about not just about what it means to be solitary and feminist today, 50 years later, what solidarity means between French and Portuguese, solidarity between European. It's a feminist solidarity and also the future. We are here to talk about what it could be and what can we do for it to become a reality tomorrow. This is the framework of the forum in this cross season. Of course, it has a cultural component, a scientific component. I always like to think about this part of the Portuguese people to issues that ended with a parabolic flight in Beja. And it's one of the subjects of the season that will continue when there was the example of the rocket. Many Portuguese youngsters, more girls and boys, taking this parabolic flight, getting a diploma of the first space flight in Beja. So I arranged with Victoire that I will talk about it before and the future and what would happen here. Victoire will tell us about. Thank you. Can you hear me? I will speak in French. Language is something that we work on here also. This work. Let me thank Sieg, has been with us and has been debating with us. Let me thank all our teams, but actually I would like to thank our Portuguese friends who welcomed us, who trust us during the season, who were with us in the forum, and during this debate that we will have in March and October because of both countries. People who had a lot to do, they do a lot in their job, but they have accepted to trust us. And they have accepted to take on this dialogue in order to try and share the best of what we have with some progress, making it that all together we can evolve for equality between men and women. Both countries are properly motivated, but there is still a lot to do. And we must include our European countries. It's an European initiative. We have had European experts that have been trained with us because we need to include all. I would like to remind you of some of the things that we experienced here, nice things that we have experienced. And let me talk about some of the things that we spoke about today, that we've discovered in Guimarães, how things work, how they work in terms of Guimarães, of the city, on how we work on equality for men and women, and the strategies. These 2 days, I'm very excited for seeing all strategies that women had to invent. For the parity democracy that's part of the Constitution, we need to find strategies to get what usually should have already been there. So it is very interesting to see how things work We continue to move forward. So we want to reach this equality. There are some things that have been said that has been brought by the Minister of Education of Portugal. I was very excited about the speech on the Minister of Education. Bravo. Bravo for what you said. The word resistance, we heard of it. For us, French, to have this resistance, we would love to hear that word often, one that we struggled with before the existence of this word. People had social struggle in campaign. There's a poster talking about the struggle of Portuguese that wanted to have the same type, the same map, the same roadmap in France. Those who fought against dictatorship, well, we are fighting not for democracy, but for a true democracy, feminism. These are things that were really important for us. One other strong thing have been all these obstacles that are invisible, preventing us to find this definition. The strongest part of it, where we saw with the three Marys, this oppression that's integrated, that is accepted. Sometimes we don't realize that we are under the domain. So this is quite strong. So this has to do this knowledge that we must be able to do. Education is always in our mind. We talk about invisibility. These are things that are not seen. Women are absent. And I'm very happy to see a generation where we have different generations. And it's true that for some, sometimes I did not realize that there were no women. Debates, that's how things worked. It was simply expected. It's not that anymore. We will be able to get, and it's genius, to have a round table of feminist men. I hope that in the next forum, we don't have men, but we will have a round table of feminist women. All these visible obstacles have a deficit. Everyone talks about algorithms. Everything happens with machinery, algorithms, video games, computer programs. They are done with male data, male data. I don't understand how there is information, extraordinary information that I got was that even mice are male. Mice are male in the lab. And I started thinking, what does this mean? And it's quite worrying, if I'm being honest. And then it's an amazing thing that has been mentioned yesterday, which was, we were in Guimarães, of the new language. Well, this is something extraordinary. Actually, if we do nothing, we are going back. It means that even to keep this element that we had 50 years ago, we need to fight always to keep the same rights. And if we do nothing, we are getting sent back. So we need to save to keep this right. We need to struggle. So when I saw youngsters this morning, I saw that we were fighting the good fight. I'm about to stop, but I just wanted to say something more. The good ideas that we had the law that I saw yesterday, I heard something amazing, which is, I don't know who said this, must have the goal of fulfilling the reality. It's not just being in the law, we need to make it a reality. We need to provoke it. So I adore this idea of causing illegality. One other genius idea that has been mentioned is this idea that institutions are not neutral. No one is neutral before us. This is institutions of people. They are the ones who make it. And they are very interesting in this part of presence, of being there. Those who are deciding, you have your own place and you need to be there to decide the world of tomorrow. And then men. We need to have men and we need to have education. We need to bring them on with all the advantages that we have in sharing power. I'm sure that there are men that are happy to perform these roles that might be attributed to them and those who are not. So it is very important to show how advantageous it would be to share power. I don't want to be talking forever, so I will return soon to the floor if they have me. Thank you. Well, thank you all for being here, dear Secretary of State for Equality and Migrations, for all your support, your reiterated presence in the first day, and now again, it is very important to be a representative of the city of Guimarães for equality, tireless, and so an enthusiast of this subject. You're ambassador of France in Portugal, your Portuguese commissary and French commissary. My dear colleagues, my dear friends, I think we can say we're friends. All this work that we've done together, that was brilliant. Dear speakers, all of you were amazing, amazing. Thank you all who are following us on stage and also those who are following us via stream. Very proud to be part of this team. The remake of the Fórum Equality from Angers in March, hosting 2022 in the cross season. Thank you to the state team. I have the luck and privilege to direct. They made an amazing work putting together this event. I think that our team is even better than it was. And thank you to the French team with whom we have been working since Angers, and they are brilliant, brilliant. Portugal and France reiterate to the world their commitment for the support and development in the political agenda that fights the persistent gender stereotypes so that anyone, man, woman, girl, boy, can live their lives in their full potential. In the last 2 days, we had on stage strong personalities, people who are committed, people who are worried, people who study, who shout their ideas, their causes, people who make a difference, people who are truthfully making us think. We had online many feminist people showing the diversity of feminism. And there are some who ask if the word itself should not be used in plural, given the vastness of realities it might capture. Men and women who brought some restlessness with their creativity, imagination, They made us think. We are thinking. Some of the things we've heard, only tomorrow we'll be able to understand. So they asked us and they make us understand what can we do in order to be able to contribute to promote equality and non-discrimination. Using resources that we have, not a lot of them, but how can we use them, allowing us to question and to be questioned also. It's important to recognize that we've done a lot and the measures that we do are part of the solution. Also, those who came from COVID, the financial crisis, and armed conflict. We also realize that there are dangers around the corner. We need to pay attention in order not to lose the rights that we have already acquired that might not be assured. And we thought that we need to be aware that equality doesn't happen out of spontaneity. It is a result of public policies and decisions of governments that the political will can move mountains, and that the highest mountains can be moved with the strategy of the gender mainstream. In a perfect world, this sectorial area should also be of equality, because that would bring the perspective of gender, not here nor anywhere. So it's important to have this definition, supervising equality and the connection that it has with all sectorial areas. For example, and I will use this as something, it's a measure that we could execute, which is what has been remembered by Portugal and France in their representatives who have been here, that school handbooks in one country and the others are not being designed on the gender perspective. Some of the texts have sexism, sometimes not inclusive at all. So this is something that seems to be visible. Portugal and France creating working groups can reach to something that can be tangible in school books with a perspective of gender. Also on stage, we talk about Black hegemonic view. Some called it the UN feminism. I wasn't aware of this, actually. And also the visibility of lesbian women. And many people point fingers to the lack of statistical data that keep hidden the reality. They show us a different reality. So there are deafening silences, and it might lead that the new amazing algorithms of modernity from databases start to give data and effects with gender bias results. Others spoke about the risks of the far right parties, and we heard feminist men saying that we need to deconstruct masculinity, not reproducing with the classic canons as it is shown usually. So they need references of men, new male models that are the inspiration. Culture can be a very important part of diversity, and this needs to happen with an inclusion. And this is very important for the cultural change that we need. It needs to be ongoing, systematic, that probably it might put at stake the way of teaching, that probably it needs to be more informative. And we heard that we need to learn how to be open to transformation, and that education needs to be transformed, but at the same time to be a vehicle of transformation. Let me reiterate that I need to think about a lot of things that have been said here. The most important, though, is that what I feel is that this was not in vain, not just one more conference. Everyone who are here had the privilege of being here, in Portugal and France who believed in this. I think that from now on, I think that we are strengthening human rights and also defending a feminist policy or feminist policies for a future which is ours with creativity and imagination. Thank you.
Agradecemos as vossas perspectivas otimistas.
Thank you for your views,
convidamos-vos a regressar à plateia.
and we would like to invite you to return
Já
to
a
the audience.
chegar ao fim,
Coming to an end,
a Câmara Municipal não quer encerrar sem
the city would not like to close without a small token of
já
our
chegar ao
appreciation.
fim deste fórum. Passamos à
Coming to an end of this forum, let's go to the closing session. We have the French ambassador in Portugal, Hélène Fernaud de Fomont,
e a Secretária de Estado
and the Secretary of State of Equality and Migration, Isabel Almeida Rodrigues. Dear Ambassador, we would ask you to take the floor. Dear Secretary of State, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I would love to start by thanking all of those who have organized this forum for equality, and it has been said that this is a mirror meeting in a certain way of the Forum Equality that has been organized on Angers on March this year.
Saison France-Portugal, qui a été lancée par nos plus hautes autorités françaises et portugaises.
The Portuguese-French season launched by the Portuguese and French authorities means that we wanted to encompass on different dimensions, bilateral dimensions between our two countries, and wanted also to address Europe and beyond. It has to do with culture, but also economy, science, and it is an issue of society that goes across our part. Equality of gender, it's one of the great priorities of the season. We are aware of this because of what we experience every day. We know that, like Victoire said, just to keep it, it's becoming harder and harder. What we have from movements are threatened by a conservative revolution that included in Europe. And I know that it did so. We spoke about Iran, Afghanistan, or Poland, or the US, that specifically their rights are being put at stake and they are fighting to bring back those rights. In the realms of Europe, this view in terms of important indicators between difference of wages between men and women on average, and there is an inequality in the market. Gender violence is also a very important aspect of inequality. 1 in each 3 women suffer this kind of violence, 1 in each 10 already suffered sexual violence, and 1 in 20 has been raped. This is the stats, quite recent stats actually, quite worrying also. During the French presidency of the Council, the most symbolic idea that it was supported by the French presidency had to do with the presidency of the boards of women on board, that aims to make sure a balanced representation between men and women in public companies.
La présidence portugaise avait beaucoup
So
travaillé sur ce sujet, avait préparé, je dirais, le terrain.
the Portuguese presidency worked on it also as prepare the ground which allow the French presidency to get the votes. Another legislative statement that allowed us to move forward in the coordination about this matter, it was possible to move forward with our efforts with the transparency in terms of wages to report the capacity of the candidates, the salaries of companies to allow a better access to justice, going beyond those who are victims of discrimination. Also, in terms of gender violence, the European Committee has published diplomas for fighting violence against women and domestic violence. In terms of the Istanbul Convention, is one of the founding texts by the Council of Europe. I would say that if the member states of the EU, only six have not ratified, and I'll tell you who they are: Bulgaria, Czechia, Hungary, Lithuania, Latvia, and Slovakia. So these are recent members of the EU that I hope, maybe this is an administrative delay, but it is six countries that are still outside of the Istanbul Convention. France, as you well know, will make an effort to get that situation solved. In France, we celebrated the third birthday of what we call the Grenelle of conjugal violence. And it has been mentioned on this event what has been made in the last few years in terms of the number of the so-called recalls, in terms of danger announcement for claims, for complaints, and an increase of 80% of women that are victims of violence. We need to continue to make an effort, and Elizabeth Bon will preside to a new committee between men and women in order to create new ways to move forward. Ladies and gentlemen, France has adopted in the last few years a feminist diplomacy, and of course, for the first time, we have a Minister of Europe and Foreign Affairs who will define French diplomacy in international action. Specifically, France will continue to mobilize empathy for the right to education of girls throughout the world. I spoke about a tragedy in Afghanistan, a tragedy that was already written, and everyone looked the other way, and the entire violence then instead of being eradicated was kept. France will also be involved in the fight for reproductive and sexual rights with this across the democracy. We see that nothing is impossible, as we saw in the US, and in this morning talks, and it has been said, the fundamental importance of education. To fight against these reflections that are many times invisible and that are connected to it, including women and girls. We need to fight against gender discrimination. And this is a target of debate. I would like to say that I hope that we can have a Guimarães Declaration with the capacity to be inscribed within the set of conclusions or to publish the conclusion of these 2 days. As the ambassador of France in Portugal, I'm very happy to contribute one way or the other for said declaration, because
tout ne s'arrête pas.
The set of the season
Sera, nous l'espérons,
from March to
effectivement
October.
une période de clôture,
October, we
de
hope
bilan,
that it is
très
a
riche,
fine period of
très
culture
réussi
where we
d'un
have a
point de
moment
vue
where we
de
do
cette saison.
the balance of
Ce
what
n'est qu'un
has
début.
been made
Et ça doit être
in this
encourageant.
season.
Merci beaucoup.
But I hope that this is nothing more than a beginning.
Muito
Thank you.
agradecemos as suas palavras, Senhora Embaixadora.
Thank you for your speech, dear Ambassador. To close our meeting, we will now give the floor to the Secretary of State for Equality and Migration, Isabel Almeida Rodrigues.
Muito bom dia, já é quase boa tarde.
Good morning
Todas as pessoas presentes neste auditório,
to everyone here.
por videoconferência. Quero cumprimentar a senhora embaixadora de França.
And also following us online, let me greet the Ambassador of France to Portugal, also Delphine O. She's somewhere in the room. Commissary Manuela Judis, to whom I would like to thank on behalf of the Portuguese government for your dedication, not just this season, but to the cause that inspires it. To the commissioner, to the commissaire of the French Party, Igualdade Rosa, also a special thank you, because this season creates efforts from both ends. Thank you for doing it, and thank you for keeping the cause under the focus, which is what we need to do in the future. Also, Paula Oliveira, please allow me to tell you that getting to know you is one of the most rewarding events that I have been invited to. The way that you work on your territory in looking for demands for people that are in it, and it is an inspiration to us all. It's quite rewarding by a central government to know that you can rely on people that will help us in implementing public policies. If we don't have this, we might have the best strategies, the best national plans, they will just be words. Your work is an example, so let me thank you, because it was very, very rewarding.
Naturalmente que tenho também que dirigir o meu
Of course, my acknowledgement also to Sandra Ribeiro, who took on this possibility of not just deepening the debate around these issues, but also restating Portugal and France in their commitment with this fight, with this struggle. Let me also thank the commitment of the entire team of Steve. Thank you for your dedication, and also to thank specifically the magnificent summary that you did of what had been these days. Thank you. Once again, to all of you for being here. Just a few days from the official closing of the season Portugal-France 2022, not exactly a closure. It will happen in Portugal with the highest representatives of both countries. Guimarães closes is connected to the realm of equality. After these days of work and a very sage sharing of knowledge, here are my final remarks. Equality in the season constitutes, to me, in terms of equality of migration, an honor, but a huge responsibility also, as well as the recognition within procedure of the new Portuguese letters, it is to be and it should be for each one of you a reason to be proud. Its work, its authors deserve our recognition. And also allow me to recognize a countrywoman of mine, Natalia Correia. She was the courageous publisher, anticipating all problems that would come to occur. She still decided to move forward. We are part of this public recognition, giving visibility to the work, bringing to the debate subjects that it directs to the fighting for human rights, for freedom of expression, freedom of thinking. And 50 years have gone by, and this work has issues that are so current and that are so pivotal, the political agenda, because they still affect the life of women, but also the life of men throughout the world. We think about what separates us from the original version, taking into account the timelessness of the work and the legislative progress that we can reach in different areas of our lives. Feminisms are fundamental to put this thought of violence and their devastating consequences to the part of this violence and the construction of healthier social constructs. Highlight the role of organizations of the civil society with structural part on women, and that every day giving them the support of participation. We live in a time and a world where nothing can be seen as granted. Democracy, education, they are threatened by an instability that has made tremble the fundamental rights, human rights. Women and children are in all crises the main part. All reports show it, but it becomes more acute. But we have other conditions as sexual orientation, disability, religion, age, ethnicity, original territory. So the speech should also be a speech that it's intersectional. And the emergence of different feminist collectives has been allowing to reinvent struggles and to liven this debate. One of the great challenges is more than include other areas of debate, thinking, reflecting, studying permanently about the connection and influence between gender, social inequality, and age, gender identity, religion, or belief. So this intersectional approach is very important in fighting discrimination in the different shapes, fighting against multiple discrimination, the prevention and fighting violence against women, domestic violence, traffic of human beings. This view is strengthened with the strategy of Portugal, more equal. The free translation might be well for 018-030, acknowledging the need of social specific groups, using measures of multiple inequality, as is, for example, the answers that our country already has in the support to victims of domestic violence, as is the case of victims in the condition of elderly women migrant women, victims of children or youngsters, namely via our REPS network, LGBT, mothers, and the relevance of the example of the empowerment of public administration that we are developing. The problems that we have discussed have a common basis associated to the gender stereotype of what is being someone. The school, Virginia de Moura, that were like great, they brought on stage this morning. I was very happy to see you and to realize how you have interpreted and took on the message that was given to discover. Congratulations. In order to deconstruct these stereotypes and the social representation around men and women, we need all feminisms. We need all people, but we need a true social transformation in the organizations in public areas. That's why the intervention in the field materializes. As has been said here today, equality is not enough to consecrate it in the law. We need to fulfill it. We need to make it a reality. And I would love to leave you with some of our investments as a project that engineered for one day. That's how it comes. And in the field of science, the project where there is no gender, where we try to find desegregation, and on masculinity that intends to challenge gender stereotypes associated to hegemonic masculinities. It is pivotal that we are capable of promoting the disappearance that must be gradual of these stereotypes in the different contexts, in school, in work, in the media, in sports, in publicity, building new models of representation and behavior without gender discrimination or violence. Ladies and gentlemen, the season is coming to an end, but it does not end here. Between ENG and Guimarães, we have defined the sectors of equality, education, and culture. Portugal and France, via the governing areas, have agreed upon itself to strengthen a commitment in terms of equality, inclusion, and diversity. We do it symbolically with a joint declaration underlining the fundamental nature for our states of an inclusive education, making sure the necessary condition to the evolution of mentality and the promotion of this disappearance of stereotypes. Both countries acknowledge that the sectors of education and culture are essential leverages for the construction and development of a true culture of equality and mutual respect within the teaching establishments, contributing decisively for the prevention of all ways of gender violence in all spheres of life. That is why Portugal and France restate their will to proceed with the goal of equality between boys and girls, men and women. We would like to invite European countries to move forward with us the path of equality, inclusion, and diversity. Yesterday, in the documentary, Maria Velho da Costa, knowing about the beating of Maria Teresa Horta after the edition of the first book, said that if a woman causes all this a commotion. What would happen if they were three? And this is a question that we should keep in our hearts and in our mind, should mobilize us in the sense of the fulfillment of this hard task of the fulfillment of human rights. I'm sure that we'll be able to keep the legacy of the commotion that the three Marias left with us, so that Portugal and France know how to preserve unconditionally the values of justice, freedom, solidarity, and equality. Once again, thank you all of those who have contributed to this forum of equality. I hope that we can all bring with us this essential idea that human rights are an unfinished task, that we are facing times of great threats, and that now, more than ever, we need to talk about this subject. Thank you.
Bem-aja, Senhora Secretária de Estado.
Thank you, dear Secretary of State.
E assim damos por terminado este
So we
momento tão
hereby
especial,
close this
celebrou
special
as novas
moment,
cartas portuguesas,
celebrating the new Portuguese letters, pointed out problems for challenges brought to women of today and tomorrow, debating education, culture, rights, and men as supporters of feminism. It has been a modest contribution to a very, very tireless struggle. So we as public authorities, local authorities, national authorities, as activists, as people, we hope that we are able to move forward a bit further into a path for a society that's equal, freedom, justice, equality, more than commitments and values, are civilizational designs that know no borders, that unite people. Congratulations, Portugal and France, together on behalf of human rights. Thank you.
Som. Pedia que as pessoas se dirigissem todas ao palco para tirarmos uma family photo.
Let's come on stage. Please, let's take a family photo, okay? Everyone to the stage.
Tout le monde. Como é que diz todo mundo ao palco? Eu não sei falar francês. Todo mundo ao palco, como é que diz? À la plateau. Tout le monde à la plateau, s'il vous plaît. Merci. Sur le plateau, merci. Madame l'ambassadrice. Parece-me bem. Tiras daí? Toda a gente. E de tirar aí de cima? Ele já está a descer? Ok, chegou. Obrigado. Vais ter que meter toda a gente aí dentro. Paula, força. Por favor, central.
As meninas à frente, mas eu sou alta. Não, vocês são os Virginia Moura.
rolo. Calma, 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 calma. Acabou o rolo. Já foi tempo.